Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here this morning as Chief Best and I are able to mark two important steps for public safety and safer communities in Seattle. First, I can tell you that we have won a victory for Seattle and for public safety over the wrong-headed policies of the Trump administration. They have abandoned their effort to withhold our critical 2017 federal grant public safety money in a way of retaliating against the city of Seattle for our position in welcoming immigrants and refugees. As many of you know, in November 2017, the Department of Justice notified us and a number of other cities that our policies, in their view, violated federal law. And then to punish us for their perceived violation, they withheld critical public safety dollars. At every step, we have defended the city of Seattle. I want to thank Pete Holmes, who's not here today, for his and his team's extraordinary work on this. And we showed them that both the law and justice were on our side. And the courts have agreed in several important rulings across this country. And finally, the administration has given in. The Trump administration and the Department of Justice have blinked, and they have given us over $250,000 that were due to us in federal public safety dollars from the Department of Justice. Really important, Seattle Police Department is going to use this money for 3 crime prevention coordinators. These are critical roles in our city to reduce crime, to coordinate in communities. They'll provide crime prevention through environmental design assessments, attend community meetings and public safety meetings, and provide that very essential link that we know is critical for public safety. These are dollars that the city of Seattle had coming to it under federal law. The Trump administration tried to withhold it from us. We stood firm, and the chief has been planning all along how we use this money to increase public safety. So with this victory for safer communities, I want everyone to know we will continue to stand up for our immigrants, our refugees, and our city of Seattle. We have constitutional powers, and we have duties as city leaders, and we will protect all people in the city of Seattle. The second thing we're announcing here today is that we are taking another step towards a safer Seattle by transmitting legislation to the council to provide a new contract to the men and women of the Seattle Police Department. As I said in my budget speech, our officers who work to protect us day in, day out, have been working without a contract, a pay raise, or even a cost of living adjustment since 2014. No worker, and particularly those who protect us, should go without a pay raise for that long. We all know what's happened in Seattle during that period of time. Home prices alone in that period of time have grown 70% in the city of Seattle. And yet we were asking our officers to just hang tight. We also knew that no agreement, we were clear, we would not go backwards on reform. As many of you know, as U.S. Attorney, I started the investigation into the reforms needed in the Seattle Police Department. I was an original signature to the consent decree. I worked with Chief Best, who was then in the department on that, and we've talked a lot about reforms. Make it absolutely clear. Chief Best and I will not go backwards on reforms. We are moving forward on reform every day to make it the absolute best police department in the entire country. And I will say our police officers have responded. They have now become national leaders in areas like de-escalation and other reforms that are necessary. They're doing what they need to do to keep our residents safe and to do it in a constitutional manner. It's only fair then that we make it a priority that we pay them what they're worth. And that's why we're today transmitting that contract to the City Council. In the upcoming weeks, I'm very hopeful the City Council will approve this contract. Let me tell you 6 very important things that this agreement does. First, like I said, we will not go backwards on reforms. We will have full implementation of body-worn cameras by our frontline officers. They've been doing that during this period of time. They will continue to do it, and now they will drop their labor disagreements because of it. There also is going to be greater management oversight in transfers and performance evaluations, and improvements to when the clock starts to run, so that we don't end up in those situations where there has been misconduct, the department can't do anything about it, because there's a technicality on the clock has run out. We're going to have civilians working in OPA and in HR leadership at SPD. Also, really critical, the Office of Inspector General has been provided full and unfettered access to fulfill its duties under accountability legislation. The Guild will also, very importantly, withdraw all pending unfair labor practice claims. I want to recognize the leadership of those who made this agreement a reality. First is Chief Best. There is no better person from the beginning standing up and saying, here's what my officers need to go forward. I also want to thank Kevin Stuckey, President of the Seattle Police Officers Guild, for his tireless work on this. And he will tell you, there's times we did not always agree at the bargaining table, but we stayed there until we got it done. So Kevin, thank you just for sticking there, but also for stepping up for the men and women of the Seattle Police Department. And thank you for your commitment to reforms as well. I will tell you, there was no person in the room who knew exactly what each reform needed and how good reforms protect not just the people of Seattle, but protect police officers too, so they can do their jobs better. So I want to thank them for that, and with that, I want to also turn this over to Chief Best, who will make some comments, and then we'll take some questions. Thank you very much.
Jake. Thank you, Mayor. And I would start by saying, part of that whole contract negotiation, we want to thank the mayor for stepping in and making sure that we sat at the table, we stayed there, and we followed this through until we had a contract to move forward. So thank you for that. You can thank yourself, and certainly on behalf of the men and women of the department, we thank you and the citizens. Nothing is more important in regards to our department about nothing is more important than prevention, intervention, and of course enforcement as a last resort. Our crime prevention coordinators are going to be a really vital and critical piece of making sure that we have good intervention and prevention, that we're providing information to community members, that we're doing the work that we need to be doing in the community to have effective community policing. They are a big part of that. And I couldn't be more happy and more thrilled that we now are able to fund them as we should have been before with this decision coming down. We were going to do it no matter what, because nothing is more important than having the ability to make sure that our community is safe. So that was going to happen regardless. And then I would say about the contract, and it's that we are so thrilled about it. Our officers deserve to be fairly compensated. The mayor already made it really clear. No one wants to pay for 2018 prices on a 2014 budget. It's just not right. So I am very glad and very thankful that the contract is moving forward. I'm very hopeful that the City Council will approve it. I can tell you that it helps us, it will help us in recruiting. It's really difficult to bring people into the organization when we can't fairly compensate them. And it brings us, this contract brings us from the bottom to the middle of our 7 comparables. So it's very important that we're able to fairly compensate our officers. We are not going to be able to do effective law enforcement unless we have people coming in the door who are committed to law enforcement. We're not going to lower our standards, but we want to make sure we compensate them fairly for the work that they're doing. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kevin Stuckey.
Thank you so much, Chief, and thank you, Mayor. First and foremost, let me take the opportunity to thank the Mayor. It's rare for me, and I've only been at this job probably about 2 years now, to have someone actually come in our first meeting together, say, this is a priority for me. We want to make sure we get this contract done. And to actually see her leadership, pushing her team to make that happen. So I applaud you, Mayor. Thank you so much for doing that, because it is important. Kind of like what Chief Best said. We want to be competitive to our comparables, not just within the West Coast, but also within this state of ours. I believe the men and women of the Seattle Police Department are some of the best that there are. Now, that's my belief. But in order to get that belief for everyone, especially the people in our community, we have to do some things. Unlike the mayor and the chief, I'm not going to say that we need to keep doing reform. What I'm going to say is I'm going to change my language to say I'm all for creation. That we have to continue to create. That we can't just say we got it right today. We have to constantly be looking for best practices so that we can continue doing the best that we are doing. I will tell you that the men and women of the police department are the best. We're going to continue to provide you the service that we have continued to do, what we've done through this entire process. But again, we couldn't have done any of this without your strong leadership, man, and your strong leadership. Thank you both very much.
Thank you, Kevin. We're happy to take a few questions if there are any.
Is this, Mayor, these 3 positions with the federal dollars, is that beyond the 40 positions included in your proposed budget?
Yes.
Is there any concern that the City Council will not approve this?
No. Look, their job is separate. They've got to evaluate this in a whole range of factors, and so I expect them to do what they do, and they have an obligation to do, is give it a thorough vetting. But we, of course, have tried to keep them apprised throughout the process. They'll have questions. But I think that throughout this process, we try to make sure the council was informed, stakeholders were informed, the inspector general was informed, OPA, CPC, because we wanted to make sure that we got a deal that we believe could both treat the men and women of the Seattle Police Department fairly and make sure that we continually improve as a department.
The Community Police Commission sent out a statement. They said they believe the contract, it appears that the tentative contract gives up many of the reforms, one in the landmark police accountability legislation. There's obviously some dissatisfaction there. One example, the standard for firing an officer is higher than preponderance of evidence. Does this, in your eyes, jive well with the accountability legislation that was passed a year ago?
Yeah, obviously the CPC has its job, and it's going to represent a whole range of voices that want to make sure that we're getting everything right. So I applaud them for looking at it. It's one reason why we consulted with them throughout the bargaining. We gave them the draft of this legislation on October 1st. We've asked them for any specifics. We haven't gotten them. We'll continue to work with them to improve things. But let me make myself clear. I don't think there's anyone more committed. There's people as equally committed, but there's no one more committed to having constitutional policing and good policing and police reform than me. It was my signature issue when I was the U.S. Attorney. It's something we worked very, very hard on. And when I come in today and I look at where the Seattle Police Department is today compared to where it was, they have every right to be very proud of the goals, the gains that we've made. And so I would never agree to an agreement that I thought was a step backward on any important thing for reforms. But obviously we want to work with them going forward. If there's specific things they have, once we get the contract in place, we're willing to discuss it with them.
But that would have to be after the contract is fully agreed upon by the city council.
That's correct.
Can you get into more specifics on how the timing surrounding this conduct allegation is changing?
Right, it's a little complex, but the bottom line is before it was a flat 180 days from the time that a supervisor kind of knew or should have known, which led to the very unfortunate incident where officer was terminated by the chief of police for conduct that was clearly improper. And their argument was that that termination occurred outside the 180-day limitation. And so there was arguing about who knew what when and when did you know the misconduct happened. So we cleaned that up to make it clear that in those egregious cases, if there's new information that comes forward to the chief during an investigation, there's ways we can start the clock over again.
So it's still 180 days, but it can change based on different circumstances?
Correct. You can start the clock over again in certain circumstances like the ones that happened before. And that was something that was important to me and to the chief to make sure that she had the latitude she needed to hold the department accountable. Go ahead, David.
It looks like officers will receive additional pay for wearing body-worn cameras. Is that correct? And was that part of the agreement for dropping fair labor practice?
There wasn't item by item. We had an entire contract that we were looking for and what the performance was, and we looked up and down the coast to make sure that if we changed the working conditions, people were compensated for it.
Some people have responded to these kind of instances of more money for things that were already legally going to be required as somewhat of a situation where the city is paying for court-mandated reforms. Do you think that's a fair summary of what has happened, where the city has had to pay for things that were already federally
No,
required?
I think it's actually very unfair. I think that if you look over the last 4 years, they have been doing what is required under the consent decree without a penny more. And they've been doing it even though they didn't have a contract. And while we look at this both through the lens of reforms, we also have to look at it through the lens of, this is a labor agreement. And people who are a member of a labor union have a right to bargain collectively, and we as the city are going to stand up and respect that right. And so if we change what their working conditions are, whether they're a police officer or a line worker or any other union in the city, we're going to sit across the table and we're going to bargain for those changes. So I think it is way too simplistic and frankly unfair to try to say that the police department as a labor union should be treated differently than any other labor union.
Do you think
Last question.
Oh, it's the last question.
Question in the back.
Some officers, they're saying they're leaving because they feel disrespected and demonized by some city leaders. In addition to the new contract, what else are you doing to improve the morale of the officers?
So first, I tell you one thing, I know that we are losing officers because we're getting poached. If you're getting paid 2014 salary to do one of the toughest jobs in this state, and someone, down the road's gonna pay you more to do an easier job, you might move down the road. And so what we wanna do, we obviously wanna make sure that our men and women in the police department are paid so that we don't lose officers. And we're doing every day is, the chief does it, I think Kevin tries to do it, I do it, is we absolutely need and depend on our police officers to keep our city safe. And we are asking them to do things today that were never in the job description of a police officer 10 and 20 years ago. They are the front lines in crisis intervention now. And because of the training they've received and because of the new policies, the changes that have happened because of that for crisis intervention are amazing. But we need to make sure that they understand that everybody from the mayor on down appreciates the work that they're doing and thank them for it.
Kevin, did the selection of Chief Best play into any of these negotiations at all? Did it make it more likely to arrive at a successful agreement?
Well, we were,
Can you step up to the
I
mic, sir?
acknowledge that offline, but we've got on the schedule right now.
All right. Thank you very much.